Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gillia. You want to hunt elk, and they live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Joe Gillia with my pal Gilbert Ornelas. That is Big O and Joe, and this is your Insights edition of Blue Collar Elk Hunting, where we talk about all things elk. And on today's special edition, if you hunt elk in Idaho or planning to hunt Idaho, if you're planning to hunt elk anywhere, then this is a show for you. With us today are two of the cogs to the Slayer Calls team, CEO Bill Ayer and their production innovation man, Mr. Joe McCarthy, and you won't find any more passionate and hunt family traditionally rooted fellas as these guys are. Bill, Joe, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah,
how's it going? Good to have. Thanks for having us.
To the show, fellas.
Yeah, thank you.
Bill, you and I have had a bunch of conversations. You guys, we've been talking about elk calls, and sports and life and kids for a long time now. And you're such a great individual. I'm excited about having you again on the show. And yesterday I got to spend about, I don't know, Joe, we were pretty close to 2 hours on the phone yesterday.
Just short of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure we have enough time.
Y'all liked it so much, y'all was going to spend another 2 hours today, huh?
I know. I say we didn't even have a script. We just talked.
You should have recorded it, Joe.
Yeah, actually, I find, in fact, I've started doing shows like that where I just call people and just record it because there's so much good information that comes from that stuff. And the stuff that we talked about yesterday, Joe, man, just the history of your family. And that's why I thought, for this show, that it was going to be perfect that we title this, man. And it's not just hunting Idaho, elk hunting Idaho. It's about everything that Idaho has brought and still brings to the elk hunting scene, man. And what you guys represent over there, and the history, and all those people that have been putting us where we can be in this industry now, way before we got here. And that was such a cool conversation, just talking about some of the families of Idaho.
Yeah. You don't just get where you're at. I mean, it's about people before you that, teach you, put you in a position, whatever it is. I mean, that's how you get where you get.
What I want you guys to do, though, if you could, just for everybody now, Bill, we've introduced you on our show before, but we might have somebody listening that doesn't know. And if you guys could just give a short introduction of yourselves so that we can tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Yep. I'll go ahead and start. Bill Ayer with Slayer Calls. Started Slayer about 10 years ago. Grew up and playing sports and hunting and fishing my entire life, and then went on to college and played some college football where, I wasn't doing a lot of deer hunting or elk hunting during those 5 years, but as soon as that was over, got right back at it. And about 10 years ago, started Slayer Calls. We started off in the waterfowl industry, and about 3.5, 4 years ago, we kicked off elk products. And that's where I met Joe and brought him onto the team.
I told you the day I met you, man, that the name itself was like, that is the best name in the industry, man, right there. And I don't, you didn't just play football. I think both you and Joe, and I think even Cody was, all linebackers, right?
Yep, we're all inside linebackers.
Yeah. Gilbert, you were a linebacker?
Middle, yes, sir. Middle.
Yeah, I was defensive end, man. I was the only smart one, right? So
they did move me out. They did move me out to pass rush defensive end from time to time, just depending on what team we were playing, what kind of quarterback up against.
Well, linebackers, if anybody knows, man, linebackers, they're zeroed, they're crazy, they sacrifice their body, and they like to take things out, and they go downhill, man. And I think, Bill, that's the thing that I saw in you the first time is just not only the great individual you are, man, but just your work ethic. Just, same thing. You get your eyes forward, you go kill the day just like anybody else that when you played sports, and you have surrounded yourself with people like that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Is to surround yourself around like-minded people and people with the same work ethic and attitude. And, having Joe McCarthy and Cody McCarthy on the team. And, nobody, unless you know Shelly McCarthy, she's way more driven than all three of us put together. Joe's wife. I call her a beast. Like, she's a track and field athlete. She ran the 400 and 800, was very competitive. She's probably killed more elk than most people that I know.
Yeah.
So she's awesome too. So we've surrounded ourselves with some really quality people with a lot of hunt behind them and a lot of go behind them.
And I'm a retired track coach, so when I hear 400, 800 runner, you know what kind of heart that lady has right there, man. Because
brutal.
Yeah, you
sprint for a half mile and then enjoy it.
Yeah.
So as a high school track coach, so get this, as a high school track coach, her high school track coach had her run the 400, the 800, then she had to run the mile, and then she had to run the 800 in the medley relay. So those are the 4 races she competed in one day.
You know what we call that? Child abuse.
Yeah, that's totally child abuse. I agree.
Yeah, that's crazy. So Joe, why don't you introduce yourself, man?
So again, I'm Joe McCarthy. I build. I'm basically the builder and production guy for Slayer Calls. My background, again, playing football in high school into college. My dad was an outfitter growing up, so different kinds of hunting or fishing, both. So I grew up in that kind of a family. After college, I got into law enforcement. I actually started with fish and game for a little bit. I did fisheries research for a bit, and then got into law enforcement. So I worked in law enforcement, did all sorts of things with that. I retired a law enforcement officer in Idaho after 30 years. I retired in 2020. So I'm now fully retired. And according to my son, when my son met Bill for the first time down at Salt Lake, he said, "Yeah, my dad's got nothing to do, so he can build calls for you." That's kind of how that goes.
You're retired, so you have
I have nothing to do. Nothing. There's nothing. I have nothing I can do. And according to Cody, I was completely doing nothing.
But I think it's important to note, like, you're like 5th generation Idahoan, right? Yeah.
Yep. So I actually have a actually I'm 4th. My son would be 5th, and my granddaughter Sage is 6th. So my great grandfather came out to Idaho before it was a state. He was actually sent out. He was one of the original timber cruisers out of Wisconsin by Weyerhaeuser Timber, sent to Idaho basically to see if Idaho had trees. It goes back that far. So he came out and he said, "Yes, I think there's some trees in Idaho that we can log and do that." He went back and then he came out in the homesteading days, and he homesteaded that area on the North Fork of the Clearwater. So my grandmother was born in a log cabin on the North Fork of the Clearwater, really in an area that doesn't even exist today as far as the town goes. It's in the middle of nowhere. And so that's how she came to me. My other side of the family, the McCarthy side of the family, came to Wallace about the same time, around 1890, turn of the, when Idaho became a state, and they started a mining company up there, Hecla Mining, and they did that. So the family was a logging mining town, very blue collar-ish roots. My wife's family's the same deal. She's her grandparents were in Idaho back in the turn of the century, working in the mines as well. So they're very blue collar people. So my dad was much more of a much more rounded hunter. So hunter fisherman. He hunted ducks, he hunted pheasants, he hunted deer and that, but he also fished. My father-in-law, Warren Sperry, he was a miner up there. That dude was hardcore elk hunter. He was the dude that would be in the Fishing Game or the Field and Stream magazine in 1975.
Wow.
He had horses, and his life, he was either taking care of his family by working in the mine or going elk hunting. That's what he did.
And Bill, how long have you been living in Idaho?
So I've been in Idaho 10 years now. Yep. I grew up in Central California near Sacramento. And yeah, I went to college out there and worked for 22 years and then had enough of it and moved to Idaho. Couldn't be happier.
I bet, man. Yeah. Yeah, that Elk Haven, right? Up there. And I mean, like I said, just the history, I mean, you take a look at the people in the industry that people see every day and stuff like that, that the names that represent and the names that aren't represented. There are so many legendary that everybody in each community knows that you don't see them on this kind of stuff or in social, but you guys have so many incredible hunters, killers, legendary people that, you know, are just next level that nobody will ever know about. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean Dwight Shue. I mean, it just came from we had that deal on Friday at the River City Church in Boise where Larry D. Jones shows up. I mean, his partner Dwight Shue. I mean, Larry's out of Spokane, but Dwight was an Idaho guy, and I mean, you're talking. I mean, they're founders of the hunting industry, so to speak. I mean, there was no industry before those guys.
Yeah, the Durhams, the Jacobsons, you
Yep,
know.
Dirk. Yep,
Yeah.
Dirk. So Lance's brother's Dirk. Dirk's older brother Lance. He's my age, so I hunted with Lance when Dirk was still in school. Corey's obviously a few years younger than me. His father-in-law or grandfather, his grandfather Bill White, actually worked for my dad as a guide. So I've known the Jacobson family for quite a while. But people like Dolan McLean or Courtney McLean, nobody knows who those guys are. Dolan McLean, I've talked to Corey about it. When it comes to elk hunting, he looks up to Dolan McLean, and nobody knows who he is. He's a logger out of Orfino. He's the most humble man in the world. Does everything for his family. His dad Courtney hunts with my dad. I mean, great people, and I mean, those are people you don't even hear of, but those are the people that really pushed us to get where we are.
You know, we were talking about this before because here we are in an industry. You guys are call manufacturers. ElkBros has calls. You have all these different manufacturers. You had the Rocky calls going on out there. You know, you've got, I always bring in Travis O'Shea and Wapiti River outdoor
I love Travis.
calls.
Travis is my man.
Yeah,
Travis, he's something else, isn't he?
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's a heck of an elk caller, and his family just such good people there in Canada. And we got to spend some time with them this year, and they're just phenomenal people.
Yeah, I think you guys spent some time with them just recently up in Edmonton, didn't you?
Yeah.
We were just up in a show in Edmonton, and yeah, we went out to dinner with them, I think 2 nights in a row, and spent a lot of time with them. And Joe McCarthy, he talks to Travis, because they're both builders, and so they talk, I don't know, maybe weekly, every other week, just about best practices, how to build a better call, and just trying to hone their craft. So
Yeah.
Travis is very.
We didn't get deported either. We tried to see what the deportation, what we could do to get deported, but they never deported us. So we came back to the America with our free will.
Was his wife Carrie there with y'all?
No, she didn't show up. She'll be at Big Sky, I think. But
she's the boss, brother. When y'all meet her, if y'all haven't met her, it's a treat for sure.
Yeah, I've met her. She's a great lady.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And you got to watch out. Carrie's dangerous, man. I mean, she's sneaky, that gal. So she was causing trouble in camp as much as she could, man. She's hilarious. Yeah, it was awesome. And then we've got our good friend Mark Carlton over at Native by Carlton, and it's funny, people see all of us, and all of us are competitors as far as we're competitive about always wanting to. We take pride in what we do and always trying to put out the greatest product. I mean, you look at y'all's website, that it just reeks of you're going to do things, you're going to do them right, and you're going to do the best you can. You're going to take pride in everything that you do. And all of us are like that. But at the same time, we're all part of a community. We're all friends. And the whole goal of all of us is for people to have success out in the elk woods, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I got to give it to Carlton's too, because that was my first bugling with a reed was actually with the HS Strut or Quaker Boy call. But then when Carlton's came out with an actual elk call, I mean, that's what I used. I used some of Jones's stuff too, but Carlton's was kind of that was what I used. That was it until Rocky made the changes to what he did.
Yeah, Wayne was the man. And I mean, that's all I remember because I was just like you. I started out calling with a turkey call, with the Quaker Boy turkey call,
Yeah.
back in the 80s, and then all this stuff starts to roll, man, like that. So very, very cool. And you are the man behind, Joe. You're behind the products as far as putting those reeds out. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those reeds, and I'm especially what I liked about the series that you were talking about, the Clearwater series of elk reeds. Um, what I really loved about it was how the tradition, how you brought exactly what we're talking about, all this history, all the things that make you tick, all the things that make that Slayer wants to represent. I think that's what I really like about the series, but it's different, man. Tell us how those reads are different.
So I basically start them off. We're extreme light stretch and light latex on one end on the Isabella, which Isabella Creek, it's named after a drainage that comes into the North Fork of the Clearwater where elk would migrate before there was a dam there, before you had Dorshak Reservoir, before it was just a river. They would come down that drainage. It's a huge landing, and then they would move down the river to migrate. So area of a lot of elk stuff, but it's in pink because it's a nice light call. I think all calls are going to bugle, cow call, chirp, whatever they're going to do. If you can run a diaphragm, you can run the call. I think the biggest thing is when you look at it's how you run the call, and that's trying to find the right call for you. So we start off with that very light stretch, 3000s latex in that block with its block latex, really light. And then we push that, we stair step it up each and every call in that progression. It's just a little bit tighter, a little heavier latex. We transition that up. So like the Isabella starts off our lightest, and then we take that same Isabella and we just stretch it a little tighter and make the minor. Now you get a call that has a little more backbone to it. You can push it a little heavier than you can the Isabella. And then I changed that to the blue latex, the Maniac. The Maniac's the denser latex. It's still 3000s, but it's a denser latex, so it makes a more nasal sound. And so you get a little different sound than what you had in the minor, but they're both about the same backbone. It takes about the same amount of air to run because they're both really light. They're step up from the minor, or from the Isabella, but you get those two steps up. Then I jump over to the next one, the Logger, which is a 4000s latex call. So it's a little heavier. For the guy that pushes a little harder into the call, that call is going to fit him better. I bring the stretch way down on it though to make it an easy step between the Maniac and the Logger. And then from the Logger, I step up to the Selway and the more natural latex. Again, stretch a little tighter. It's going to get a really high note, kind of similar to the minor, but able to push a high, somebody who pushes heavier can push more air into it. Then I step up to Cody's, which I call it the race car. That purple latex Norfolk call it's a race car of a reed. You can push everything you want into it, but it still has a nasal sound. But it does take you got to push air into it to really make it run right. It'll run low, but it's meant for high volume air. Then you have guys that there are just some big dudes out there that just can't back their air off. That's where that lock saw. I don't know of a human. Maybe I don't even know. Maybe even Bigfoot could blow the locks, or couldn't blow up that. That's a 6000 latex reed, and it's heavy. But there's guys that run that. When I look at myself, my brother and I are obviously very similar. My brother is probably one of the best elk callers I know, and I run in a world full of elk callers. But when we're the same build. I push more air than he does, and he likes those lighter frame calls. My son, on the other side, again, another clone of me, he pushes more air than I do, and so it's just kind of it's not really a right or wrong. It's like Some people like shrimp, some people like steak, some people like chicken. It's the same thing with calling. And I think the same thing is with the duck calls that we make is this. It's the same process. If somebody's just sitting there telling you they got the greatest call ever, it is probably for them, but calls are very individualized to that person and how they function them. And so I build those calls based on function, not necessarily trying to say I have a bull call or a cow call or whatever. I'm trying to fit that individual.
Yeah.
I think that's important to say is, everybody should try all the calls that are on the market. They don't have to go buy every single one of them, but whether it's an ElkBro call or Travis's, Wapiti River call or a Phelps call or a Slayer call, it's like try them all and find what fits best for you and works best for your style and not only your style and how you blow air, but the places that you're hunting too.
Well, one of the things I say too is you shouldn't be just sticking with one anyway. I mean, it's kind of like having golf clubs in your golf bag, right? There's some things like for myself, I always wear 2 calls on the brim of my hat here. I have a reed holder and I put them on there, and I've got what I call my go-to that I'm using most of the day. Then I'll have what I call like a closer on this side that's going to be a real light latex if I got to get really, really quiet, something that I want to put out that I don't want to put a lot of pressure, because that's what you're talking about when you're talking about latex and stretch and who can handle what. Some people are like tongue pressure people. Some people are air volume people. It just kind of depends on their style, and it can affect the latex because of their style, and they can actually push. I bet your boy, I bet Cody can just crank through some latex in a couple of days, where I can actually run the same call for a week, because of just the style of how we do it, right?
And before Slayer, he would run through a call a day. I mean, one call. Like in a normal hunting situation, he would run through one call in one day. He puts a lot of air, and he has a lot of range in his calling. That's what made him world champion. But that range is, I mean, that's hell on latex. I mean, you're stretching the heck out of it.
It's pressure and air, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's how you're getting those different pitches, is pressure and air. So and unless some of the calls are, like you said, they're already stretched to a point that you're going to go ahead and pop something. Like we have a call that we run called the Juice Man that hits a pitch that is, it's unbelievable to hear. But what I tell people though is the other way that this is different clubs in your bag is that there are times when you got to sound like a different voice, a different animal. And if you're sticking to that same call that you like and you love, well, one thing is you're sure about the consistency and the conformity of that call. You're not going to make a whole lot of mistakes if you're, good with that call. But a lot of people stay with the same rhythm, they stay with the same cadence, and they stay with the same voice. And once a bull has busted you, you go with that same rhythm, same cadence, and same voice, you're done. I mean, it's just like I can now black this screen. And if we were to talk, people would be able to tell when Joe was talking, when I'm talking, when Bill, and when Gil's talking, just because we have different voices and we get identified like that. And you get a bull that, is even beginning to be a mature bull, and he's done figured out, he's done busted you once, you're not pulling that dude in again with the same rodeo, right?
See, I in some of the stuff my like seminars, wherever I talk about like 3 axes of calling, and what you just said. See, one other thing I gotta give you is that directional calling. So many people miss directional calling. Directional calling is so important, and so I've heard you talk about that, and I'm like,
One of the
yes,
most
say that. It's like, yes, directional calling is super important. But the next thing is it's like 3 axes of calling. You have the length of sound. When I say hey, or I say hey, okay, that's different. Or the speed, hey, it's quicker, harder than hey. It says something different. But volume, whether it's being really high or really low, also is important. And that's where that if you're hunting northern Idaho, this thing with Idaho is extremely vast. You can hunt 10,000 feet parks, or you're going to hunt northern Idaho, which is like it's a boreal forest where stuff is right in front of you, really steep and wet. or you're in southeastern Idaho where you're going to see an elk and it's going to be at 3/4 of a mile away because
Right.
it's open country. If I'm up north, I'm going to use a low volume call because the reality is you're going to get close to elk before they bugle just because of the amount of traffic and stuff we get up there. And so I use a low volume call. That same low volume call down southeast Idaho isn't going to work because they're not going to, I mean, they might be able to hear it, but I get into a higher volume call, I can do that. But so many people bugle the same cadence, the same rhythm, the same volume for everything. And there's reality. You got 3 axes there you need to work.
That's why I try to tell people, experiment with different calls, learn the different voices, understand the stretch. Now, here's the thing. You talked about your line of calls that you have there, and you have somebody that can run your crazy 6 mil up, well, they're going to be able to run anything. That person that can run anything. Whereas you have somebody that's running the Isabella doesn't mean that they can run 3 steps up, right? Because they're just not ready for that, or they're not comfortable for that, right?
Although we had a guy that was with, one of the guys sat on the board with Slayer. I mean, he was a big dude. You put a light latex in his mouth. He just he had no control to be able to, no, not that he couldn't learn control, but he just, his natural being was just much greater. And he just trashed, the light latexes, and the heavier latex, he was like, oh, this is great, and, so.
Bill, what about you, man? What kind of call are you? What do you?
Yeah, I like the 3000 latex. So, I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. You would think I have a lot of diaphragm air, a lot of lung pressure. But I am a 3000 latex, a little tighter stretch is what I like. So, I will run a 4000 latex on a lower stretch, but I'm usually right in that ballpark, high stretch 3 or low stretch 4.
Well, some of the stuff that helps or has to do with that too is whatever type of bugle tube people use. I mean, if they have a bugle tube that gives them some back pressure, it's kind of like, blowing a bugle, a horn, a regular, trumpet. You're able to, control that air a little bit better with the sounds and stuff that you're making versus, when I first started, you talk about directional calling. I've always, when I first started, it was Carlton's Mega Tube, dude, because I like to throw my calls back behind me. I like to be able to look forward. That was the inspiration for the soloists that we have and what makes up the soloists. But the problem was it's 1.5 inches opening. So you better have some lungs, man. You know what I mean?
Well, so I did the same thing. I took the Carlton's tube, and I actually took a heat gun and I basically melded it to a baseball bat and then taped it all up, and then I drilled holes. I played all sorts of stuff with openings and stuff. But when you're blowing into that giant hole, there's air just kind of dissipates. And that's the whole thing. That was the big kicker with ultimately what really Bill and I hit it off. We have a lot of things. We grew up totally different, but we actually have a lot of things in common. But the cool thing is that the idea of having that acrylic handle tube or using some of the ideas behind building duck calls and goose calls,
right?
That bringing that idea to elk hunting was something that we had actually brought up with other people, and they just weren't too old to deal with it. And Bill was like, hey, let's go in the garage and do that. And pretty soon it's done. And, Cody's got the first, acrylic handled tube. I mean, it literally took, I don't know, what did it take you, Bill? 10 minutes?
But yeah, and it's, we're blowing through a 1/2 inch hole versus a, 1 1/4 inch hole or 3/16. Yeah. So yeah, you're creating that back pressure, and the acrylic is good acoustical material, but I think the most important part is creating that back pressure to help control your breath and control your read.
Yeah, so you can do more things with it, right? Yeah. Exactly, man. So what I want to do, man, is I want to because you guys are in Idaho, and I want to kind of do this as almost like an Idaho type tribute there. When we were talking yesterday, I'm gonna kind of step back a little bit, and Joe, we were talking about how elk hunting in Idaho is it's not just a season, it's a way of life, right?
It is. Yep. Totally. I mean, growing up, so I, just like you coaching, we've talked about this, the coaching thing, and it's the football stuff. You know, I've talked about even with Corey, the coaching thing, coaching. So I coached football there at Orfino High School, and literally on the opening day of elk season or deer season, you might as well just close the school, because elk hunting is built into the community. Hunting in general is into the community. It's not just, and it really isn't just elk hunting, it's everything. Bill White, who was probably one of the best, big game hunters I know, which is Corey's grandpa, Rena's dad. He was also probably the greatest fisherman I know. He fished and, fished on the Clearwater, and, he caught those 20-pound steelhead. It's a way of life there, and it's not just one season. You hunt, yeah, we hunt. But then what happens is then you have, what happens when elk season closes? Well, you got deer season, so you go out and hunt the same area. Then you have cougar and bear season, so you keep going doing that. Then you end up, there's a part of time where you're kind of locked out of the backwoods maybe, so you go snowmobiling, and you go snowmobiling in those same back areas, and then you turns into turkey season, and then turkey season turns into, the summer where now I'm out fly fishing, but everything I'm doing is putting me out in the mountains, where I am having interactions with animals and understanding. The more you're out there and you walk the drainages, whether you did it fishing or you did it turkey hunting or whatever, you're out there and you're learning, and it's that learning process. And I think that really, when you look at the amount of like calling stuff that came out of that area, the Orfino Clearwater area, it's because everybody's out there doing it, and they're learning. They're listening to elk in the springtime, not just a month before season. They're actually listening to them all spring long. Listening to my brother's house. He had 100 elk down there a couple months ago, before they migrated back up out of the snow. And he's audio taping or videotaping those elk making those sounds all the time. That gets spread around with that community in there. And so everybody's like, hey, do you get Jim's video? And you're listening to these audios. Everybody's pushing each other. And that's just what kind of makes that happen. And it's getting out all the time. It's just a way of life, is being in the outdoors. It's not just a 10-day vacation. It is the way you live your life.
Well, and the whole time I'm fishing, the whole time I'm, turkey hunting, I'm still finding antlers. I'm still looking for track. I'm still, checking for sign. I'm finding rubs. I'm doing all that stuff and making all those mental notes the whole time. I mean, it's just a reason to be actually, you're doing something that keeps you out there, but you're in the elk woods at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this yesterday on our phone call, was, we don't always hunt for antlers. I mean, there's some hardware in the back, but I've killed a lot of elk that don't have that in the background. They weren't packing that on their head. People up there hunt for food, and they fish for food. So they're catching steelhead and salmon because they want to eat steelhead and salmon. They're shooting deer and elk because they want to eat deer and elk. And it's the same thing with the bear, the cougar, ducks, pheasants, grouse. My brother, I mean, he's a grouse hunting machine, but that gets him out. He loves grouse hunting, but it gets him out in that same spot, and they're doing it because it's food. It's blue collar people, and they're not people that have a lot. I mean, the deputy sheriff in Clearwater County probably makes $15-16 an hour, and they're living in an area because of the inflation with homes, $400,000 for a home. So how do you make ends meet? Well, they make ends meet by going hunting. They do it because they got the Clearwater River right there to catch fish, and that's what they do. It really is. It's not just fun. It's actually life. It's what sustains life.
Well, we were just in hog camp. Gil, what were our meals, man?
Well, we ate elk burgers and elk burgers and elk burgers, and
You had some whitetail?
Yeah, we had whitetail, bacon wrapped whitetail. We had wild hog sausage.
Awesome.
So I mean, we ate some wild every night, and we had some Gulf shrimp that we brought in. So from the Gulf there out of Texas. So, I mean, everything we ate was pretty wild. Even
the Gulf shrimp, if that would migrate, I would like to Gulf shrimp migrate up the river where we could fish those. I want Gulf shrimp in the Clearwater.
Hey man, it's a lot easier to freeze and send for the shrimp than it is for the elk meat, man.
That's
So
true. Yeah.
So I mean, we ate something wild every night, and at my house, that's what we do. You know,
Yeah.
we're in the woods year round, man. I mean, here in Texas, we're in a place where we can do that year round, whether we're chasing wild hogs or axis deer or, you know, some type of exotic nilgai. I mean, antelope, whatever it may be, man, we're hunting something, right? And we brought our kids up in that way of life. You know, when we're not hunting, we're on a boat fishing somewhere, right? So, I mean, I brought my kids up hunting and fishing so I wouldn't have to look for them when they grow up. You know, I knew where they'd be. I knew where they'd be. So, I mean, like yourself, Bill, I mean, and Joe, I spent time in law enforcement as well, and then got wrapped up in the oil field community, and I've traveled all over the world. But, you know, there's no place like home, and there's no place like being in the mountains. You guys just get to live in a fantasy world, really, because you're there, right? Most of us down here in the flatlands of Texas, we get to look at skyscrapers and steel, you know, as mountains. You guys really get to live that dream every day of living in a place where most people don't really even comprehend, right?
You know,
And that way of life, I have to drive 5-6 hours to go to that way of life every week, but that's what keeps me sane. So that's why we're going to keep doing it.
and you know, I always hear like this big conversation is going on in Colorado about what's going on there about trophy hunting and blah blah, you know, like that. And you know, I being raised the way I was, with 6 kids and a family, and dad having to travel, and we hunted, fish, squirrels, coon, everything.
Yeah.
Frog legs, you know, I mean, all of that. And, you know, when I came out and started going to college and convinced my wife to marry me when I had nothing, one thing I did have was a shotgun and a bow. And one thing that we were going to have was meat in the freezer. And, you know, when I started hunting elk at 19, 20 years old, you know, when I went out to the woods to hunt, you know, of course, it was my passion. It's something that I loved to do because it was part of the tradition of my life. It was what I understood being out in the woods and where I was comfortable. But I was also out there to bring meat home and put it in the freezer. You know, that's how we sustained ourselves. So, you know, you go by killing an elk every year with a bow, and it's 16, 20 years later, and people are going, man, you know, you kill an elk every year for the bow and with the bow. And I'm like, to me, it wasn't like this accomplishment. That was what was supposed to happen so that we could eat at home, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's you know, that's what I love about the conversation we had yesterday. And we talked about, you know, your family and the generations, and all of us grew up, you know, Gil with his grandpa, you with your family, Bill, and all of us grew up with people introducing us to that. I mean, when I was reading some things on you and your family, Bill, you know, what your dad did and what your uncle did, these type of working men that gave you that work ethic, that taught you skill sets. And, you know, you might have started Slayer 2 years ago, but you were doing calls a lot, you know, way before that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in my dad was a steel worker. I think the most he ever made in one year was $29,000. But back in the 80s and late 70s, he was laid off usually 6 months out of the year. So we ate stripers out of the river, we ate sturgeon, we ate pheasant, we ate deer, and we ate elk. I moved here 10 years ago, but my dad started bringing me to Idaho elk hunting probably 30 years ago. We were rifle hunters back then, but so I've been coming to Idaho for a lot of years to come get meat. We had the locker, the ice chest out in the garage, and that was always full of fish. Salmon would come up our river. We'd eat salmon, we'd eat steelhead. And so my mom, the amount of care my mom used to take preparing those meals for us and doing them differently. We'd have carne asada tacos made of deer, right? Like all the different ways she'd make it up. And but yeah, I mean, it's funny because I didn't know both your and Gil's background, but it's funny that we're all here and it was a way of life for us, right? Like usually every other day I came home from school, something was on our front lawn getting cleaned by my dad, whether it be catfish, stripers, or sturgeon or something, and he'd sit there and clean it up, throw it in the kitchen. My mom would clean it up more and then go in the ice chest.
We did the same thing with roadkill.
I grew up on a 180-acre farm, man. I mean, we farmed all kinds of vegetables, and then we had our own cattle and our own hogs, and you name it. I mean, so we knew the value of hard work when we got up in the morning at 4 o'clock. We didn't know why we were getting up at 4 o'clock as a kid, but as soon as you got that bushel basket in your hand to go pick peas all day, you figured it out, right? But we understood what it took to provide for us and for our community. And we fed lots of people in town and people that were without. My grandfather, he grew up poor, and he was your dad was a steel worker. My grandfather was a welder. For 41 years, he welded for Cameron Ironworks. And I bet you my grandfather probably never made more than $45,000 a year in his whole life, right? But you couldn't have told it. I mean, he supplemented his income with some cattle sales and this, that, and the other, and, welding on the side when we built fire stations and all kinds of stuff around the community. So, I mean, yeah, hunting was always a way of life for us, right? And fishing. I mean, my grandfather had every season booked. I mean, you name it, from quail, squirrel, dove. We were going to hunt something. So it was a way of life it was brought up. I was brought up in, but it's dwindling, guys. I mean, we're seeing it happen right before us. Is we got to keep pushing this, pushing this narrative forward.
If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our Base Camp Elk Hunting Training Camp. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like when, Joe, when you're talking about bringing, the competitors together, not that we're apart or we're ever apart, but, we all need to kind of join forces. And I think the important part of this is success. You're a little kid and, your dad takes you out and you spend all day with your line in the water and you don't catch a fish. Well, that ain't any fun. And you probably don't want to go in, right? So if we could all help hunters be more successful through coaching, through better products, through mentoring, taking somebody hunting, and the more people we can get successful in the woods, the longer we'll keep this tradition alive and well, not only for our animals and our land, but for the people wanting to do it. And what you experience out there is that no phone, no computer, nothing, no fancy car can give you what being out there doing it can give you. The spiritual, just everything that hunting gives to a person, like to keep that tradition going, that sport going, like we have to make people successful out there and enjoying what they're doing. And so I think you're exactly right, Gilbert, is, we need to come together because we're a small community and we need to push the envelope on that.
Yeah, big business, but a real small fraternity of people that are in that business, right? And the more we help one another out and perpetuate the best part of our businesses, the better off we're going to be. As you guys have played on many teams, no one person is greater than the team, right? Mm-hmm. So when you can get everybody rowing the boat in the right direction, in the same direction with the same ideologies and same goals and principles, we tend to be a lot more successful, and I've been coaching baseball, softball, football for 25, 30 years. The last 15, 18 years, I've been coaching girls fast pitch in that world. And I'm telling you, I tell my kids all the time, man, you cannot talent won't beat hard work when hard work don't, have a lot of talent, vice versa. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
You got to put the work in. And even though your competitors, even though we all, have a difference in what we like to do, the same principle of hunting is still, whether I run a Slayer call or I run a Wapiti River call, at the end of the day, we're out there perpetuating our art and what we love to do, which is hunt elk, right? And keep all of that stuff free for us to do, and as less government involved in it as we can, and keep the hunting places that we hunt, and even bring more people involved, more kids and more women and everybody else that are much more involved. I'm so glad to hear that your wives hunt and stuff like that. That's too cool. My wife.
That's the only reason why I'm married. That's the only reason why I stay married. If I was to quit elk hunting, my wife would divorce me.
Yeah. Look, my wife's really starting to get involved in the hunting stuff, and she's been fishing with me her whole life, but we've perpetuated that down to our kids, and I think it helps a lot, and I think it helps the kids grow up with a real strong foundation of principles and our faith. We talk about our faith all the time, and the Creator that's created everything that we have. So I think guys that are, no matter what call you blow or no matter what bow you shoot, what arrow you shoot, we're all in the same boat, and we just need to jump on board and help one another.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is if you can spread your knowledge of this Phelps call works for me, this Slayer call works for me, this Wapiti River call works for me, this ElkBros call works for me. You've now got a wider variety of sounds that you can make versus just the one or two calls in Phelps that work for you. When you can get all, the whole gamut of them. And I think, that's a pretty good deal. Obviously I hunt with Corey in the last couple of years or last year or so. He's been able to use other reeds because he's no longer on a contract. And, so he's voiced that he really likes the fact that he can use a lot of different other calls and you're talking about one of the best elk hunters in the world ever, and he's liking the fact that, hey, I can be better if I use all you guys' reeds. So if a guy like that, if it benefits him, it'll benefit everybody.
And he's actually being a catalyst now. He's being a catalyst for people and for all of us as a community joining together. So I just love that about Corey. I think that's just awesome that he's doing that, man.
Yeah. No,
and guys, I hadn't been around y'all's calls very much, and Joe brought some calls to camp with him this weekend, and we got to blow them, and I was blown away at the innovative portion of y'all's tube versus reed together, right? And I'm like, wow, that was absolutely phenomenal. I think a guy that doesn't know a whole lot about calling can run that pretty easy if he just puts a little bit of time behind the call, right?
Yeah, you were talking about getting kids out hunting. So in Idaho, you can't hunt till you're 12. But you know what? You can my son is going to take his 9-year-old daughter out hunting this year, and she's going to bugle, and she's going to use that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, are you talking 12 for big game, or you can hunt small
big game,
right?
Yeah, big game for elk and stuff. But she's going to go out when she gets a chance. She'll bugle for Cody with that enchantress, and that what a way to get a kid involved. They can't even hunt.
No doubt.
It's just. Yeah, I brought this in because we are elk hunting coaches, and I believe that a huge part of my success is being able to run a mouth diaphragm call. But there's situations where you have people that just are unable to run a mouth diaphragm call for different reasons. Whether now we have a guy on our team that has dentures. He still runs one, but there's some people with dentures just can't run one. There's some people just because of conformity or formation in their mouth or gag reflex, they're just not able to run it. Or there are people that are able to run it and have partners. And here's the biggest thing that happens. Most people, generally, when you have a partner, there's one person that's a good caller and the other person is, Yeah, I saw you on a post today, Bill. There was a photo where they said, what is going through Bill's mind right now? It was a look on your face, dude. And well, I was like, because his partner can't call, that's what that look is right there.
Well, that's why I like hunting with Joe and Cody, because they're 100 times better than I am. So I get to be behind the bow the whole time.
So
I know how you feel, Bill.
One thing I was, telling people is for me to tell people to be successful, if you have that partner that struggles with a diaphragm call and needs to be successful, I've only got one part of it here. This goes to the Enchantress. This is actually a system that comes right onto the end of a bugle tube, that you guys have at Slayer so that you can bugle with it. It is a push button. So it's basically, if for a lack of scientific term, you're pushing a tongue onto a diaphragm call right there. That's all. That's the best way to describe it. It's putting that same tongue pressure on to be able to get this. And really, I grabbed this thing right out of the box and started playing with it. And I mean, you can, and you get people that start messing with this and doing, like you said, you got kids that grab this, and within minutes, they're able to reproduce the sounds that they need to, right? So
I have a story too. There's a guy named Stu Waldrop. He's a metal art dealer out of Oregon, and Stu was an outfitter that prided himself on being able to bugle elk, and guy was he was a good bugler. He got kicked in the face by a horse, broke everything in front. Yeah. And so, I mean, he physically can't do it. He broke his face. And the look on his face when we gave him that tube, it's like, and he called me, he said he was able to take his granddaughter out hunting again and bugle an elk in for
that was his one wish. Like, he was getting older, and his one wish was like, guys, if I could just call on an elk for my daughter and her kill it, would be like all I need. And that tube gave it to him. It was like, this is what it's about right here.
Yeah, I'm telling you, fellas, I was absolutely blown away at the ease. And look, I pride myself on being able to run a gamut of calls. It doesn't matter, and I like them. I haven't met one yet I really don't like. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like most cold beers. They're pretty good if you like them. If you like beer. At the end of the day, man, I ain't met many calls I don't like, and y'all's is exceptional, man. I mean, just the sounds that you can go from zero to nothing, and I mean, hit some really gnarly, raspy bugles. We were really putting it to the test against me and the bugle tube, and then Joe was using the Enchantress. Man, it was it. I got to give it to you guys. That's an impressive tool.
It was a pretty good success. Feels pretty good to be able to see that work.
So that's where I was saying too, man. If you have that buddy, you have that pal that just doesn't put the practice in with the reed, now you have something that you can arm them with to help them help you, out there in the woods. Now, then it's all about just understanding when, where, why type things, understanding what's going out there. But even with that, there's basics. I mean, I can't tell you how many elk I killed just with cow calls, man. So, it's now I got to start in the 80s, when it was the golden years, right?
You picked the elk that was closest to the road.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah,
but
you didn't have a million other people in the woods with you either, huh, Joe?
Oh, man.
I'll tell you what, though, my brother, like I said, he's a great bugler. That dude, he keeps telling me, he goes, why do you go walking off the road? Why do you go walking way out there and go get the, he goes, you're a call maker, make calls, call them to the road. He goes, what? And that's what, and he does that every year. And I swear he does it just to like make me look bad, but he will call elk right to the road.
So
for him.
I'll tell you the other thing, guys, that I like about this. is, and I'm talking about the Enchantress, and I show this part of it because to me this is the workhorse of it. The other part is just that's the tube to go out. That form factor can change. So when you have this, what I love about this is because of the different pressures that you're able to put on there and the way you can actually work that button, you can get those variances in that latex where a lot of other, I mean, there's some incredible external calls out there, but most external calls have that same sound,
Yeah.
that go there, and you can't get the nuances the same way that you can with that. So
the cool thing with that too is because it's I mean, it's made to run, a diaphragm frame is made to run your mouth. It can get wet, and so when you have those mornings when it's frosty and cold, and your breath is going through that, where sometimes the reed type external sticks.
yes, yeah,
That doesn't stick. It runs just like a diaphragm frame.
yeah. Yeah, that's the beauty of it, and that's what I had a hard time with externals is, before you know it, you're spitting in that thing, and it's and it's choking when you don't need it to choke, right? So,
Right, exactly.
I've heard you guys might be changing the name of the Enchantress to the Elk Slayer. But I tell you, I love the name because it is enchanting.
Yeah, nobody can pronounce it, so we're like, let's just change it to the Elk Slayer. It's funny because we're at shows and stuff, and people will be like, "You got that Elk Slayer thing?" And I'm like, maybe we should just name it Elk Slayer. So.
Yeah, I hear you, but congrats on that, and we push it to our guys and the people that we teach that struggle without a diaphragm. I think it's a great product. You guys did aces with that, man. So
yeah,
thank you.
Again, it's just trying to get people successful. If you can get a 10-year-old boy out there, or girl, and you get above a canyon or something, and they let out a bugle and they get a response, that's a huge win, right? Like even if they don't go down and kill that elk, just hearing a response back and saying, "Hey, you know what? This is kind of cool. I'd like to get more involved." It's to me, it's again just getting people to be successful.
well, it's also teaching their ear, man. I mean, when you start making sounds and you're able to do that so that you're hearing another animal and you're trying to do that the same way, it's actually training your ear so that if you ever do go to a diaphragm call and start working that, you know what that is supposed to sound like. You understand the pressure because there's something about how you have to work that thumb that kind of corresponds with pressure that you kind of know, okay, I got to put a little bit more to get that pitch and come off of it. So it's a learning tool as well, as far as I'm concerned.
I look at my son and Bo Brooks, they're roughly the same age. They grew up the same way. Casey was taking Bo just like I took Cody. And, I mean, Cody's a baby. I mean, I had him in my pack before he could even walk hunting. And then when he was able to walk, I'd take him out of the pack and put him on the ground so I could shoot. But him listening to elk at 10 yards or 20 yards as a baby, he's learning that language really early. So now at 30 years old, his ability to pick up variances between calls and pitch differences, he can make that run because he's been doing it since he's been calling elk as long as he's been talking.
Yeah.
Because, I actually I don't know how many calls he ate of mine before he could even talk. So I guess he was calling before he was talking.
Well, that's like I tell people about when I try to explain it, I explain it as a demanding S mew that the cows make, that yeah when they do that, and just being able to hear and understand some of that stuff, like you said, it's just to pick up those nuances are huge for when you are trying not to be the same old rodeo or putting it in the right circumstance out there. Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you this. We're going to start talking some Idaho tactics here, man. We're going to make you spill your guts on your secrets. And I'm not going to ask for waypoints.
Nope, that's okay. The big thing with Idaho is that Idaho is a very vast state. And
yes, it is.
The tactics that you do in North Idaho and the Panhandle are very different than the tactics you do in the southeastern over by Wyoming. And it's just topography. And so like when you're talking about what's your go-to call, to me, it all depends on where I'm hunting. If I'm going to be hunting in really close, which in the Panhandle, I mean, I've shot elk that the arrow hit the elk before the arrow cleared the bow. So I mean, they're that close. I called Lance Sellers, he does some stuff with Rocky Mountain. I called an elk in that stepped on him. So you're in heavy brush like that. We typically, I always am going to start really soft and work my way up. But when I'm in timber, I'm definitely working more variations and lower volume than I am out in southeastern Idaho, where I'm, reaching across a high desert. Different than what I'm going to do if I get into canyons like the Frank Church or
Or you can
some of
bounce
the
it.
Hells Canyon stuff. There, I'm going to use a higher pitch volume that reaches out and gets out somewhere. So I
So let
change
me,
all
I
that
mean,
stuff
you
up.
keep talking soft and high pitch and different. So are you more bull oriented in your calling than cow oriented?
Yeah, I probably am. Yeah, no, I'll just be honest. I probably am. I think, I don't know, the people I know that I hunt with, like Dirk
And Jake,
or
yeah, the
or
Jacobsons, yeah.
Corey or Rocky, we are more bugling oriented. And I think it's because in general, it reaches a bigger area of ground. I mean, it covers more. I also think this is the other thing. This is my thing, but elk really, if you put an elk on a contest stage that's an elk that's been bugling until like September 16th, he's going to suck and he ain't going to win because their bugles get really bad. And I think you
Yeah,
can make a lot of mistakes in bugling
sure
yourself
can. Sure can.
and get away with it. Cow
Yeah.
calling, cow calls make the same sound all the time. And I can, sometimes when I can't pick out a hunter on the bugle, they start cow calling and I know right away it's a cow, it's a hunter. It's the quickest way to pick that up. And I think everybody wants the cow call because that's the more conservative way to go. But I think you can screw up that way a lot.
What way do you, since you said that, what way do you think they screw up the most?
I think that just the pitches and like the freak, like how it sounds. I mean, you get sounds that just don't you get stuff that just doesn't
Ew.
people
It's a lot of people use their mouth and they do that ew type thing with
yeah,
their almost a
and it's
cat
not
sound, right? Yeah.
and that
Ew.
elk just and those little casts that it's really quick, it's sharp, it's got a like a hollowness to it on the end, it's got a really high note, but that high note sometimes in the span of the call, if you were to put it on a sound wave, high note's really up here, but it's actually fairly short. And it's that at the end that's actually bigger, where people go, yeah, and they like drag out too much of the high end to the front end because that's what they're hearing. Maybe it's harder to start a read. So you get a little extra E on the end because you're trying to get the read set and it goes. But I think you can screw that up. Not that elk, I've heard cows make some crazy ass stuff, but bulls really do screw up. And it's not really so much what is said when you're talking to elk with a bull, it's how you're saying it. And so it's that volume, it's the speed of the cadence, it's a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be clean. It can be, it's just you're speaking with emotion, that way. Not that I don't cow call. I mean, I'll cow call and do all that. I start pretty much all my bugling series out with a cow call, just because I've been in situations where I walk up to a tree and, well, Bill and I did this just in New Mexico where you were. We go up to this little ridge and I let a little thing, and that bull is like right around the corner. I mean, he's right there. And it's like, whoa, I don't want to start that whole series off with me going, ah, I want to start it off soft and work it up. And, I
Yeah.
have a script in my head that I want to I want an elk, I want the thing to build up. I just don't want to come out and punch an elk in the face. Now, if I get that response back that he wants to punch, throw some punches, yeah,
Right.
I'll throw it right back at him. But there's times too when you get that bullet hitting every single time and he's being aggressive and he's really and then all of a sudden it just goes away. And he's moved and he's changed locations. Now he's a little less confident. And so for me to go out there and go blast and keep doing that, that doesn't work.
Right.
Change that game up, move back down into a different level of calling and do that. Maybe even when he gets in close, not bugling, that's maybe when we switch to the cow calling. But I'm always trying to bring the game down, and then ultimately I'm trying to flip the cadence. I want the elk to bugle. I want the elk or me to bugle to the elk. I get that thing. I try to flip it to where I get him to where he's searching out me. He makes that sound. I cut him off, and I don't call. And then he calls. I cut him off, and I become that guy. And that's ultimately kind of where I, in the end.
So go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead. I was going to give a short story. Scenario?
I was just going to ask him, is there a difference of responding? And here's why I want people to understand: me responding to a bull that bugles at me versus me cutting that bull off.
Oh, yeah. No, there's me cutting him off. That makes them. I mean, that's like saying, "Hey, no, it's me cutting you off." It's like, "Hey, don't cut me off." I want to talk, and that pisses those elk off. I mean, it does. Now, on the other side of the coin, if you step on an elk that's not wanting that, he may shut up. That's how you got to read that. You got to read that sound. Yeah. There's a lot to bugling. That high shrink note. That's just that locate note. And, a lot of people don't realize too. Bugling is really that cow or bull to cow kind of sound. They're calling cows, with their bugle. That's what they're doing. They're trying to get the cows to come to them, and it's so you hear that note, or you hear that little roundup bugle that goes up and down and all that. That's those bulls talking to those cows. When you start, the elk, when it changes, when it's going, you hear that more rasp, that more scream, the shorter note, the harder note. That's that, saying, "Hey, no, back off. This is my turf." And you got to kind of learn to read those bugles. Just because he bugles back every time doesn't mean he's wanting to talk to you. He may just be wanting to talk to his cows.
Yeah. In fact,
Especially
most of the time,
cows.
yeah, most of the time, when people get on a bull in the morning and they call and that bull responds, they think that he's responding to them when he's actually might be responding because of you to tell his cows, "No, I'm here," as they're moving up, right? Yeah. So, Bill, you had a story.
Yeah, so last year, Joe and I were hunting, and we get out of the pickup at dark, and Joe lets out a bugle, and we hear some bugles off to the north of us. And then a bull bugles way to the south of us, probably a mile away, half mile away. So we decided to go north after these easier bulls. Storm was coming in, the wind was shifting, and we actually almost killed two of those bulls. So now it's 10:30, we're heading back to the truck. And every time Joe bugled this bull, that first bugled back, to the south of us, every time Joe bugled, that bull would sound off. And up until 10:30, I mean, we took off at 7:30, we got back at the truck at 10:30, and Joe bugles again at the truck, and that bull bugles again. And I'm like, "Let's go after that bull." And this guy Clayton we were with, like, "You want to go? You want to go after that bull?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I want to go after that bull." I go, every time Joe bugles, that bull's responding. He goes, "There's something up with that bull." And so we hike all the way over there. We get down in this drainage, and once we're down there, Joe starts bugling nothing. And Joe's changing up his bugles. He's doing aggressive. He's doing soft. He's doing everything in the book, right? Not a response. We're like, son of a gun, right? Like, sure enough, we hike all the way over here and nothing. And this bull bugled every single time. And so out of like frustration, Joe lets out an estrus. He does some cow calling, and then he does an estrus buzz. And that bull lit up. And he starts running this ridge about 500 yards back and forth, just bugling his head off. Then Joe starts bugling, throwing in some cow calls. And so I hike up onto the ridge, and I see that he has about 50 cows bedded down up there. So in my head, I'm like, he's running that ridge, protecting his cows, telling them to stay there. And then as Joe started getting aggressive and he knew there were some cows down there, then that bull started getting really aggressive. And now he's coming over to the ridge to look down to make sure that bull's not coming up, being Joe McCarthy. And I'm positioned. That bull comes in with 17. He was about a 350 bull, comes within 17 yards of me. And I'm fully drawn. Just need him to take one more step. The wind changes. He turns around and pushes it.
Wasn't his day to die.
Wasn't his day to die.
And we had with 50 cows. Yeah. He did. He had 50 cows. I mean, he had a bunch of cows. That's a lot of noses.
But just that whole scenario, right? It was like changing up his calling and finding out what's going to work and why he's up there and what he's trying to say, right? And then once Joe got his number, like once Joe was able to flip that game and say, hey, there's some cows down here, and I might come up and try to take some of your cows too. And then all of a sudden the game switched and he was now protecting and willing to fight for it, you know?
It became territorial at that point and protective. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
think all-
there's so many levels to that. You know, I had a similar thing when I was guiding in Colorado, and I really wasn't guiding. We were hunting with an outfitter that was taking a client of mine hunting, and it was slow, man, really tough. It was like the second week in October. Bulls were kind of being quiet, stuff like that. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, man, would you just mind if I bugled one time here? You know, we just got out of the buggy and we're going to make a little round off this ridge, glassing and stuff." He goes, "No, man, go ahead." He didn't even have a call with him, right? And he said, "No, man, go ahead." So I got my bugle tube out and I bugled, and this bull blows up right under us, right? Sounds like he's probably about 400 or 500 yards. And he's like, "Oh, man, come on." So we keep easing down through there, and I'll cow calling as I'm going, like I'm coming to him, right? And he just shuts completely up, won't say another sound. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, man." So we go completely past him. What we didn't know is he was below us about 400 yards. Okay. And we go completely over the top of him. Wind's in our face. Thermals are coming up. It's about 10:30 in the morning. He's below us. Well, what I didn't know, brother, is he had 25 cows bedded down. And when I bugled, I sounded like a pretty healthy bull. He didn't want to give up his position anymore because it sounded like I was coming. And now the cows are coming too, so he's hearing them. So he's just quiet, right? And we eased down through there, and then I turned out a lost cow call. Yeah, yeah. Man, I mean, he blew up 125 yards below us, and here he comes running up the ridge. And the guy's like, "Oh my God, he's coming, get set up." So we set the rifle hunter up, man. Bull crests the top of this ridge. And when he did, there's a whole bunch of cows with him. And so the hunter's like, "Which one do I shoot?" I said, "Shoot the lead one that's walking up there with him." It was a really nice 6x6, about a 320 bull. And he smoked him at about 106 yards, I think, and shot him frontal and dropped him right in his tracks. But again, if we would have never said a word, that bull would have never talked back, right? And he wanted to keep quiet the whole time we're coming through there because he's thinking, well, if that bull's, you know, with some cows up here, I don't want him coming down here and getting my cows, you know? So it was just odd to see how the bugle fired him up, and then he went totally silent when he thought we was inside that bubble, you know?
Yeah.
So pretty wild how that all plays out. But
Joe,
I think you're right. I mean,
I'm sorry, Gil, finish up.
no, what I was saying is I think Joe's right. I think, you know, the bugle is a whole lot less, like you said, the worst bugles I've ever heard from a real bull, right? So I think you can make a whole lot of mistakes bugling, but the cow stuff, you better be on point because they figure that out really quick.
Yeah, and it's important to paraphrase what he said as well. It's more about the type of emotion, the type of call you're putting out, that speed, that cadence, how aggressive, how, you know, if it's just basic, you know, a basic location or something like that, you know, there's a difference. I mean, also, we're big on scenarios, and it's kind of like what you were talking about, the scripts that you have in your mind sometimes, Joe, you know, and I want to talk about that script here in a second, but, you know, we'll do scenarios, and I actually have what I call a double bugle. That's kind of my signature bugle that basically came about by accident, because I used to do it because when in the day when we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have Onyx and all that stuff, Chav and I would be separated in the woods with elk, and I needed to, you know, let him know where I was so he could come to me. So instead of just doing one bugle, I'd bugle, and as soon as I'd start to come down, I'd go right back up like a bull cutting off another bull, basically. And I cannot tell you how many elk I've called in with that double bugle or got responses from when they wouldn't respond to any other.
So my brother and I call that the whoop-de-doo, but it's a whoop-de-doo bugle. That's the week. We kind of do the same thing. Where you hit a high note, drop back down, and then come right back up. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times those elk do that same thing, especially when they're in a crowd of other elk, where especially with cows, they're making those kind of sounds. And I do that even more with, again, the lighter latex stuff, because there's more those lighter latexes are easier to control, but that you can sound like that up and down thing. You sound like, especially if you lower the volume, you sound like an elk sneaking in quiet, trying to make the sound to further get the cows, but not really wanting to let the bull hear it, which he's hearing it. But you're sneaking in and doing that instead of just coming in, slamming the door open and throwing in the flashbang. You're actually sneaking in the door. And I think the elk's like, whoa, what, that people don't mess with their volumes much. And I like that whoop-de-doo bugle. I
What do
think
you
that's
call it?
a good bugle. I call it a whoop-de-doo. It's a whoop-de-doo bugle because it goes whoop-de-doo. It's kind of like that. But my brother actually, he started doing that whoop-de-doo thing, and I was like, that works. And so we've all kind of copied it.
It's funny because I always felt like the reason I got elk to answer it was because, anytime you hear multiple bugles, there's generally a hot cow there. And when they heard one bugle come up and as it comes down, then hitting that other high one like that, it almost sounds like another bull cutting another one off or two bulls engaged, which doesn't include them. So they almost pipe off to say, hey, I'm here too, to do that. And it's not like there's already two bulls engaged and it already sounds like maybe there's a hot cow there. That's the only reason I think, because dude, the first time I ever called in a bull with it, I had a bull down, and so I'm trying to call Chav in to come help me so we can break this bull down and pack it out. So I'm just doing double bugle, double bugle, double bugle, obnoxiously. And Chav finally got to me 45 minutes later, and in that time I had called in 4 bulls.
Wow.
Over top of the bull I had on the ground.
I've always been of the opinion that it's the best time to call in a bull is when you've killed a bull. I don't know why that is, man,
that's
but
true.
If I kill one, I got one on the ground, I can call in 5 more. I mean, it's just crazy how that works out, man.
I think there's something to do with the scent on that too, because I
agree.
So.
Happened more than once.
Well, because that whole area, if you had a herd or you had multiple bulls or you had a bull, if they've urinated, if they, any of that scent is in the air, and, if the cows have urinated, that's in the air. So I think all of that helps that situation. So let me ask you this, Joe. You were talking about a script that you have in your head. Give me an example of what you mean by that.
Well, when I'm looking for a place to bugle, I usually I'm looking for a place where not only is my bugle going to get out, so I'm not just bugling into a tree. I want to find a crack in the trees where it's going to get out, or I'm going to get an open spot where I can see across the canyon or somewhere where I can see. But I'm going to start low, and I'm going to make very quiet cow calls, little ones, just to see where things are at. And then I step things up and I slowly raise it up. Then I move into my bugles. Those bugles are very non-threatening initially, just very high notes. Just carry the high note, and then I'll just slowly start creeping that up. And then if that's not working, then I'll start being more aggressive. There's also a time that we do a lot of double bugling where we'll split and get across 150 yards and bugle back and forth at each other. If that doesn't work. But once I get the elk rolling, wherever he's keying on, my job is to, either me or move whoever is hunting in front of me down to where that's at. And I'm going to keep moving my script back down. I want to move myself down in the volume and down in aggression and then work it back up. And when I find that thing that's working, then I keep working that same point. But I'm trying to paint a picture of what's happening, and it's that emotion of what is happening. It's, like you made the comment, lost cow. So people cow call, right? They either cow call or they calf call. Okay. There's lost cows. There's more aggressive cows. There's estrus cows. It's all about emotion. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, hey, come and find me. I'm lost. Yeah. You have to paint a picture of something. That's how you do that, is by changing that speed of the call or the length of the call. you change all that stuff up and
Volume level. Yep.
volume levels, and I keep moving it down. I want to move it down, and ultimately when I get in close, I want to get to where that bull is bugling at me. I want to make a sound, and sometimes it's with cow calls, sometimes it's with a little bugle, but I want that bull to bugle, and then I want to bugle right back at him, and then I want to get to where he is making those calls. And a lot of times you can do that with cow calls. You can make little cow calls and little things like that, and he'll bugle back, and then I cut him off. And a lot of times I'll say that, I bugle mostly, but when I'm calling him in, I'm cutting him off, but I'm maybe getting him to bugle where I can cut him off with a little tiny chirp or a little tiny, cow call of some sort like that. But I'm trying to paint that picture like, hey, I got cows with me. Sometimes, if I know it's a decent like herd bull and I know there's cows in there, I'm not necessarily going to cow call because he's got cows. I'm gonna sound like a bigger bull. I'm gonna get in there. I'm just gonna scream and do that. And there's times I've sat back 150 yards and I call and call and call and call, and I make it sound like there's two bulls up there going, and I call in cows. And as soon as those cows come in, then I try to, we try to swoop them, push them off behind us, and get us between that bull and the cows. And that's when really magic happens. That's when you can do that. My wife, Shelly, she's always the one out in front of me a lot of, until she tags out. But I mean, we've had cows walk within 3 feet, 2 feet of her, like where she's had to back up into a tree to let the whole line of cows go by. And as soon as they go by, we drop down where they just came from, which again, where they came from, they were peeing and they were doing things of that nature. So as long as the wind's right, I'm still not going to go in there downwind, but I'm going to move down where they just came from and make that sound like I'm the bull with those cows that he just lost.
So do you ever worry about, like, when you do, it's almost like cutting a herd in a sense, when those cows get by and you get in between, do you ever worry about spooking those cows and them running off?
I have. I mean, I have spooked them. I've done that, and they do run off, and I'm okay with that.
It actually adds to, and that's what I was trying to put in. It actually adds to the scenario when that bull hears those feet.
100%. You get that herd running away from that elk. He's like, he can hear that sound probably better than he can hear, because I know when elk they hear a real high tone, but they also hear deep sounds that we don't hear. And that running sound is that deep bass, boom, 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 boom. They can hear that. And I think that's like, oh no, I just lost my cows. And that will, I mean, like I say, magic happens at that point, because it's all fired up. Like he just lost, and he's like, he needs to step up to the game.
Yeah. And that's something I'm 53 years old, been hunting elk, I don't know, 35 years. And hunting with Joe, that's one thing I've learned, because I'm always so scared or careful about spooking the cows. And the last 2 years hunting with Joe, he's like, I don't care, like whatever, let's get in there and kill that bull. I'm like, what? Like cows are right there, and I'm still learning, which is awesome, because you never know it all, right? And hunting with different people and getting to know you guys, you continue to learn, right? And and so this is fairly new to me. It's probably, I should have known this by now, but I think it's a great tactic.
Oh, dude, it's my 42nd season. I learn something new every year. So
every year,
I mean,
we learned so much in Canada when we were in Canada, just from the way that the elk,
different environment.
Different environment, the way they operate.
I've had situations where I'm putting on that scenario, painting that picture of that bull with the cows, and I've got a bull coming in, a target bull that I want coming in, but before he gets to me, I have 4 rags that come in right on top of me, and you're like, and the fella I'm with is like, well, do we just freeze so then move? I'm like, heck no, man. I'm going to blow these guys out of here. And when I do, I'm going to scream just like a bull that would have been pushing them out, man. So that whole scenario lit that up. You can't be, if elk go blowing out, you just got to give a reason why they blew out. That's it. You just got to continue.
And the bark, people get all worried about the cow barking. Cows bark at each other, and they bark when a bull pushes. I mean, you watch them on, bull goes to push them, they'll bark for whatever. It's not just us. It's a lot of things that cause them to bark. So I don't worry about that.
Yeah.
No.
When they bark at me, I bark back.
Yeah, me too. The other thing too, in my calling stuff, so my wife shot a bull a couple of years ago, and that, it was coming in, and it was the hills, it's the topography, we're side hilling, but we have draws on each side. And I got back in that little draw and I ran up and down. And when I'm running, I am running heavy. Boom, 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 boom. I am stomping. I am making ground, like I'm raking and doing that stuff too, but I'm making a lot of sound like elk going through, stepping on branches, stepping on everything I can to make it sound like a bunch of elk in there. And as long as it's not a bunch of metal sounds or
Right.
all that kind of stuff, as long as it's natural sounds, it's all fair game.
I think that's one of the favorite things and things I want to pull out, and what you were talking about in painting that picture in the scenarios, using environmental sounds, making elk believe that something elk are doing is happening right there.
Yeah.
So let me ask
they make a lot of noise. They make a lot of noise in the woods when they're moving to and fro, man. I mean, kicking logs and running over things.
I'm gonna put you on the spot, man, because in both of you, because these calls that you guys do are your babies, right? These are your children, huh? So you guys have a favorite child?
Yeah, I don't. I know Bill probably does. I really don't.
Hunting with a call maker is sometimes frustrating. Going hunting with Joe McCarthy, he brings his briefcase out there and he'll get a bull bugling. Then he opens up his briefcase and there's we call it his Skittles. And he's got 25, 30 calls in his pocket. And he's sitting there going through them, and he's he picks this one up, looks at it, he puts it, and then I'm like, dude, we got a bull right there. You can in my head, the linebacker mentality, bull, go kill, right? And it's and he's taking his time, he's sifting through his Skittles and he pulls out and he tries this one. He doesn't get the response he wants, he's trying to paint that picture and then he grabs another call. So yeah, Joe doesn't have a favorite call. He's got
I see that thing as paint, right? I'm not going to paint in black and white.
Right.
I have all the colors of the rainbow. And I know that my 6,000th latex, when it comes to a very short, aggressive, loud bugle, it's going to have it, and it's extremely sharp in the grunts because it shuts off when it hits a certain amount of low pressure down.
Right.
So it becomes very sharp. I know that Isabella can be really, really quiet, and quiet does not give your location away. If I go Kia, or whatever, make my cow sound, and the elk's going to look and say right where I'm at. But if I do it in a whisper, he hears and he's like, where did that come from? I want that searching kind of thing. So I know that my minor is a step up in pitch. I know that my maniac is more of a nasally buzz. And so I am literally sifting through my Skittles of all these colors I have in my hand, trying to find that right sound. And I'm mixing and matching that. That's where I go back to it. I mean, if you can't run my whole series, take my series that works, go over to Phelps and go get their couple that work, go to, Wapiti River and buy theirs that work, go to Rocky Mountain, get theirs that work, go to you, get yours that work, because the more Skittles you have in your pocket, the more sounds you have. And that's how you paint that picture. I change cow calls. I'll change from the maniac to the minor just because I get a higher pitch Caffey sound out of the minor than I do the more nasally sound out of the maniac. That North Fork gets a different sound. It's a little louder. It's a little sharper. So you want that more hey, listen to me with a cow call, right? I can get that with a minor that I can't necessarily get with the North Fork, that I can't get with those other two because it's a sharper call. So I literally, to me, it's a rainbow. I want all my colors, and I want to be able to paint that picture as best I can. I don't want a black and white photo.
Well, Bill, I noticed that you've put these things in sets of 3. So do you have, is that how you are? Are you running a favorite set of 3?
I'm just not that talented, with an elk diaphragm. So I have to keep my game pretty simple. And it's kind of how I am too.
Bill's cutting himself short.
Yeah. But I've always been a keep it simple type of guy. So yeah, I'm like the River series. keep it in that range. And I feel like I can get enough range and enough versatility there. And with knowing just being humble about my ability, knowing that I can kind of do things that I want in that range. And not stepping out of my swim lane and screwing stuff up.
So you said the River Series, is that your go-to series?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Selway Locksaw and North Fork. It's a very good combination.
Yeah.
It definitely has volume, and you get the high pitch with the Selway, you get the nasal with the North Fork, and you get the really high volume, very aggressive sounds with the Locksaw.
Yeah.
And I built them in that order. The Selway is a very, very pristine. If you've never been to the Selway River, I mean, Field and Stream went in there a long time ago. I mean, it is known for elk hunting. It is classic wilderness, Selway wilderness area. It's very pristine. The water's clean. It's beautiful. There's West Slope cutthroat trout in that thing. That's why it's blue, and that's why that note runs high. The Locksaw, not so much. It's a raging torrent in the spring. It is a raging river. It's Class 5 rapids, some of the best like rafting in the country when that's running, because it is a raging torrent. And that's what I made that call out of. The North Fork, it's where the elk were. It's what elk were. The North Fork of the Clearwater, headwaters is Kelly Creek, top end Blue Ribbon Trout Stream. It is truly where the elk were, and that's where I've hunted. And that North Fork it's elk. That is an elk call.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the way you pull all that into that.
Yeah,
That
solid.
it just
Yeah,
shows.
well, I have some history with it. I know the area pretty well, so it's helped me figure it out.
Yeah, very cool.
But really, to pay homage to that whole series again, to go back to where we started in the beginning, that stuff's named out of those areas in that area to pay homage to all those people that have hunted that. Galen Kuykendall, that dude, he I don't know if he's hunted. He's probably not shot more than 3 elk in his life, but he spends probably 350 days a year in the woods logging, and he sees elk. He talks about elk, and he's the one that's growing elk because he's out there making little clear cuts, doing little things here. He's making sure forests get planted, and people don't understand what loggers do.
For elk habitat.
Loggers
Yeah.
are it. It's like harvesting a wheat field or a orchard crop. Loggers keep the forest fresh and young and growing. You have all phases. You have old growth, and you have very new growth. For life to live, you got to have it all. And a guy like Galen Kuykendall, he's the guy out there doing it. And he hunts once in a while, but because he's too busy working, but he's out there doing it. And just to pay homage to those people, that's why we have a logger call. I mean, I want those people recognized for who they are. And I know that Jason Phelps over in Oregon, they have the similar things for where they're from. And I don't want to take away from where they're from or where you're from down in New Mexico, because we're all kind of the thing. But this is where I'm from, and I want to recognize those people that helped build me and ultimately helping Slayer grow. And I mean, my son, I mean, he's a product of that area.
Well, I want you to know that's what speaks to me. I mean, that speaks to me when people pull what touches them and has made them and pays homage to that. I think that's a huge part of Bill and how you represent Slayer, man. I mean, kudos to you guys for that. My hat's off to you. So let me ask you this: anything new on the Slayer horizon? Any future goals there?
Yeah, somebody keeps bothering me about making a smaller tube and directional calling and things like that.
I wonder who that is, man.
I won't say any names, but yeah, we do have
It's
something.
my son.
Yeah, Cody keeps talking about it too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we do have some things in the works. A bugle system that will incorporate, all those things. Along with the enchantress and the acrylic. Probably tie all those things together into one system. So, yeah, it won't come out this year. It'll be next year. We're making some modifications. We'll be field testing it this year, just getting the tube right and everything right before we release it in production. So.
Very cool. I'm anxious to see that, man. And it seems like it's interesting. Anytime we have a conversation and we start even just talking about a possible innovation, next thing I know, man, it's happening with you guys. I mean, you don't sit very long, Bill, man. I mean,
Yeah, like I said, we tried to rush it for this year, and I didn't want to do that. Things weren't right, and that's the thing. Like I want to produce quality products that are going to last forever and work. And we were trying to rush it for this year, and some things didn't work out right with it. So we're going to hold off and get it exactly the way we want it and release it next year. So,
I'm the brakes. I hate to say it, but I'm the brakes, and then it comes with production, and it really comes down to, you know, I have kind of been the brakes to Bill. I mean, it's like, hey, we want to run with this, and I mean, I'm the brakes because I'm looking at what I can produce. My son can produce what, Jace Van Antwerp is a kid I coached in football who, I mean, what can we produce and still maintain quality? I don't want to get
good
into a
point.
position where we need to put out numbers because we need to fit some business goal. And I guess it's because I guess for me, I have a pension, and so I guess I have my fallback. But but the business thing, I really want to keep that quality high. And when you come to work for me or Bill, when it comes to building calls, you need to know how to blow the call for one. I'm not going to have people building calls that don't know how to use a call because they don't understand what it's like to go out in the woods, spend you got 10 days vacation you've saved up for 12 months out of the year, and you've put all this money into it. You're not taking your wife on your cruise. You're going to go out and go elk hunting. This is where we're going to go. And I go out there and a $13 reed fails, and your whole thing screws up. I know what that's like to have reeds fail, and I don't want that. And so as we grow this thing production wise, I have a certain parameter of abilities that you need to have to be able to function a call. And then every 20 calls, you're making one, put it in your mouth and saying, is it within specs? And when you take that call, like Jace, the kid that I have, helping me do this stuff, one of the kids, he's an electrician by trade. He takes one of those calls and he will blow that thing. This is part of his job. He will blow that thing all the way to his work and all the way back home. And he does that every single day. And we're trying to see how long does it take for you to blow that call out? Like, how many days do you get out of it? And, ultimately, I would like a full season. I think it's hard to say that with people because everybody blows so differently. But if I can get 10 days out of a call, that's an average hunt. That's an average hunt.
Absolutely,
So
man.
I'm happy with that. I just don't want to have 3. I don't want my calls having 3 days.
Yeah, and I can tell you, man, I've been cranking on them since I got them, and am extremely happy with the product, man. I haven't come across a bad call. And one thing you haven't talked about is the innovation that you've had on that with the inverted frame, and some of the things that are happening in the length, so you have more control over your stretch. I mean, there's a lot of thought that has gone into this. I mean, you talked about some things being a little bit accidental, but it's like anything. You were talking about a painting earlier. Some of the best parts of the painting are the happy accidents that happen, and you realize that, and then you play on that, right? So,
what you have to give credit though is to Bill, because honestly, you got me and my son who have ideas, right? They're ideas. We think they're going to work. I hope they're going to work, but somebody has to take a chance and do it. And Bill has actually said, "No, I trust you. Let's give that a shot." And to build that frame and change the way presses were made to make that frame work the way it does, he had to build the press to change that was different than what everybody else has done. And the same thing with the length in it. It's deeper than other frames. It's like I have an idea of building that this is going to work. Bill actually has to have faith in our ideas and take a chance to make that work, and he did. I will say that, like the acrylics thing, we brought that to a couple of other places, and threw it out there, and it was like, no, they didn't want to take a chance because it costs money to do that stuff. And Bill is pretty good with the research and development. We're doing things, and not everything works, and so and that costs money, but that's how you get to where we're at.
Yeah.
And I think we're right now we're doing things which ultimately other companies are gonna copy those kind of things. And
Sure.
what that means for the consumer is that they get better products everywhere.
Rising tides raise all ships, right?
Yeah.
And that's, when quality becomes an expectation, when performance becomes an expectation, that gets voted for by hunters out there, and they vote with their wallet. And that helps all of us that need to make a little bit off this to be able to pay the bills and keep the lights on. We want to make sure we do that. And I think it's beyond pay the bills and lights on with most of us. I think it's just strictly pride. I hate for somebody to tell me that they had a problem with something that we gave them. Hate it. And make sure that we do something that goes way aboard and above when that happens. So, and I know that you guys are exactly like that, man. So kudos.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not about the money. It's about creating products, quality products that we feel proud about. I'm at that age and place in my life where money's not as important anymore. It's about producing something that you could stand behind and be proud of in a space that you honestly care about, more so than most things in the world.
Absolutely.
I think there's an athletic component to this too, because you talked about it, Joe, with track. I've talked to Corey Jacobson about it because he's a basketball coach at McCall High School up there in McCall. I've talked to Bill about it. There's a thing about being as an athlete to get to the levels that we all did. Because Corey, I don't know, many people know, Corey was a college basketball player.
Yeah.
To get to that level, you don't sit back. You're not good enough. Corey, he's the pinnacle of what I would think elk hunting in the industry is right now. That dude is not complacent. He is trying to make himself better all the time. And I think that is a nature of the athletic background and for the elk calling thing, with Slayer, you have me who played in college, so if you've ever heard of the ducks crashing in the blue turf, that's my lie. I made that up. Me and Lance Sellers.
Have you ever heard that, Gil? Have you heard that story, Gil?
Yeah. I heard the story, but
I made it up with Lance Sellers. We had a big blue field and it had no stripes on it, and I made a joke that you could call ducks into it, and then media made it into what it is. But my son played. He played. Our whole Slayer team is very competitive that way. We are trying to, and not just with each other, but we're competitive with ourselves. If I'm screwing up and I know I'm screwing up, I'm going to keep trying to get better. And I think that's just the nature of the business. I mean, we want to keep getting better.
So y'all listening, the name is Slayer. You can find them at slayercalls.com. You can find them on Instagram. Where else? Any place else, guys?
Facebook, Instagram, all the social platforms, YouTube, Amazon, slayercalls.com. So
you got Shield. We were in Shields too.
Yeah, we're at Shields in Idaho and in Missoula.
Awesome, man. Guys, I first of all, congratulations on where you're going, what you've done. And thank you so much for being on the show today. I think this is going to be.
Are we done? I was ready to go another hour. What are you talking about? I'm ready to keep going.
We could actually go another.
We're just getting warmed up.
We might have to jump on again together, y'all.
What I'd love to do, Joe, is if we could all get together and do a hunt sometime. I don't know if that's possible.
Oh man, it'd be awesome.
Yeah,
it'd be awesome.
We got to find a way to line that out, man. Because
time in camp would be great.
Hey, I got the camera. I got the camera. I'll follow along and film you guys. just like Corey's Outfitters for Hope. I'm not even hunting. I'm just cooking. I just like to be there. So I'll do whatever.
Yeah, and I don't know if people heard that. Say the name of that again.
Oh, Outfitters for Hope. It's Corey Jacobson. He takes out. It's his hunt, but it's sponsored by Outfitters for Hope, and they take out kids who have overcome great amounts of adversity in their life.
Or
And,
still dealing with that adversity.
yeah, and still dealing with it. And
diseases, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's if you know, Google Outfitters for Hope if you're listening
And
to
that's
this
the number
podcast.
4. It's the number 4 if you're looking for it. And they take donations
incredible.
and they take support. So I think that's
The crazy thing with it too is I mean, when you get in that camp, there's Phelps in there, there's Corey in there, there's us in there, and there is absolutely zero egos. It is all about getting that kid into what he's doing, and I mean, it's not just the kid, it's the family and everything that comes together. And I swear God works his magic in that camp. It
100%.
has been that thing. And if you don't believe in God, you just got to go to that camp and watch. And then after being there for 4 days, you'll say, yep, nope, there is a God, because.
Yeah.
And absolutely, God bless you guys for all that you do for that, man. Yep. Guys, thank you very much, man. We definitely got to do this again. We're going to talk about that hunt. And for everybody out there listening, man, Gil, close us out.
Well, if you like what we're doing here, you got to go to ElkBros.com. You can rate, review us, man, please. That's how we kind of get this thing out even more to our listeners. Like we say down here in the Lone Star State, fellas, husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Hug your babies. Keep your broad head sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting. Peace.
Peace, everybody.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yeah.